It is Friday, and the constitutional clock has officially expired. 60 days ago, President Trump notified Congress that American forces were engaged in hostilities against Iran. Under the War Powers Resolution, that meant Trump had 60 days to get congressional authorization or pull out. He has done neither. Instead, his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is arguing the ceasefire paused the clock, a claim that has ignited a firestorm on both sides of the aisle. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz situation is hammering global markets. Britain is staring down potential 6% inflation, and there are real questions about whether U.S. forces are actually standing down at all. Joining me now are Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor, and James Chen, our geopolitical analyst. Sophia, let me start with you. Is Pete Hegseth's paused clock argument a stroke of legal genius, or is this the executive branch simply making up the rules as it goes?
Thanks, Emma. Let me be direct. It's mostly the latter, and I say that as someone who fully supported the strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. The War Powers Resolution doesn't have a pause button. You don't get to declare a ceasefire that your administration brokered and then use that same ceasefire as a legal shield against the deadline the ceasefire was supposed to make irrelevant. That's circular reasoning, and the lawyers in the room know it. Now, I want to be absolutely clear. The Democrats screaming about this are hypocrites of the highest order. They said nothing when Obama turned Libya into a jihadist catastrophe without a single congressional vote. But two wrongs don't make a right, and the principle here matters enormously. As Douglas Murray has argued for years, the West's credibility rests partly on its internal coherence, on its institutions working. If Trump wants to finish what he started with Iran, he should go to Congress, make the case publicly, and win that vote. The intelligence on Iran's nuclear program should make that argument for him. What I can't accept is an administration that wins militarily and then loses constitutionally through sheer legal sloppiness.
But Sophia, isn't there a credible argument that going to Congress, opening up weeks of floor debate, amendment votes, partisan grandstanding, actually hands Tehran a propaganda victory and undermines the very military deterrence you're defending? And James, what's your take on this?
Well, look, Sophia is right that the legal argument is weak, but I think she's actually underselling how consequential the economic dimension of this is, and that changes the strategic calculus entirely. Here's the data that nobody is talking about loudly enough. 20% of the world's oil transits the Strait of Hormuz. The Bank of England is already warning of 6% inflation in Britain. That's not a rounding error. That's a genuine cost of living crisis landing on ordinary people in allied democracies. The real pressure on Trump isn't coming from congressional Democrats waving the War Powers Resolution. It's coming from petrol prices and grocery bills. And here's what that means practically. The administration has a narrow window to either lock in a durable Iran settlement or get formal authorization. Because the moment the economic pain becomes politically unbearable, the pressure to just walk away becomes enormous. Going to Congress isn't just constitutionally correct. It's the only way to build the political durability needed to see this through to an outcome that actually sticks.
I hear what James is saying, but with respect, that misses the point entirely. We're not talking about building political durability. We're talking about whether the executive branch gets to rewrite constitutional law on the fly because it's convenient. The economic pain is real. I don't dispute that. But if we accept the principle that presidents can simply declare a ceasefire and thereby suspend the legal framework governing military force, we've handed every future administration, Democrat or Republican, a blank check for permanent, undeclared warfare. Think about that. Think about what a president with less restrained instincts does with that precedent. The trajectory here is dangerous, and frankly, the ceasefire might not hold. If Iran's hardliners push back, if the strait stays closed, if proxy activity resumes, we're back in active hostilities with the clock already expired, the legal argument already used up, and no authorization in hand. That's not a hypothetical. That's the real risk sitting right in front of us.
Here's what I want to know, because this feels like it could tip in multiple directions very quickly. If the ceasefire collapses, if Iranian proxies resume activity, if the Strait of Hormuz stays effectively closed into the summer, what does the next 6 months actually look like? James, where do you see this going?
The way I see this playing out, There are really three tracks. Track 1. The administration runs out the legal argument. Republican leadership shields Trump from a congressional rebuke, and this becomes a new normal that nobody actually challenges in court because the judiciary won't touch it. That's the most likely short-term outcome. Track 2. Trump goes to Congress proactively, frames it as strength, wins the authorization vote, and actually emerges with more political capital heading into midterms. That's the best outcome. Track 3, and this is the risk. The ceasefire collapses before any of this is resolved, and we're back to active conflict with expired legal authority, rising inflation, and a divided Congress. If that trajectory continues, you're looking at a genuine constitutional confrontation that no administration in 50 years has actually had to face down.
Here's what concerns me most, and I think this is the scenario people aren't gaming out seriously enough. Iran has spent 40 years mastering the art of strategic patience. Their hardliners don't need to restart the air war. They just need to keep the Strait of Hormuz ambiguous, keep energy prices elevated, keep Western economies under pressure, and wait for the political will in Washington to fracture. The real risk isn't a dramatic ceasefire collapse, it's a slow-motion erosion where the economic pain becomes unbearable. Congress starts defunding the operation anyway, and the United States ends up withdrawing not because it was defeated militarily, but because it was defeated domestically. What history tells us is that's exactly how great power resolve has eroded before. Not in one decisive battle, but in 1,000 cuts of political exhaustion. And that is why getting this right constitutionally and strategically, right now, this week, matters more than almost anything else on Washington's plate.
Sophia Reeves, James Chen, a genuinely extraordinary conversation on an extraordinary day. One thing's certain, somewhere in Tehran tonight there are people in rooms studying every word coming out of Washington, and they like what they're hearing.